Welcome to Short Movie Channel. Today's movie takes place in the future, where the world is ruled by an advanced company called C. This company has developed groundbreaking technology by implanting chips into people's brains, transforming them from ordinary humans into robots. These individuals are referred to as peacekeepers because their mission is to protect the state and enforce strict laws. The movie begins with the protagonist, Rhett, who works for C. We see Rhett receiving a notification about a new mission. A photo of the girl he needs to arrest appears on his screen, along with her address. Rhett seems depressed and frustrated with what's happening in the country, and even with his own job, but he has no choice but to carry out the mission. When he arrives at the address, he finds the door wide open. Rhett steps inside and discovers the house in total chaos. Not only that, but he also finds a man in the apartment with a gunshot wound to the head, lying dead on the floor. Rhett keeps searching the apartment until he finds the girl he's looking for. She's injured and armed, defending herself. She tells Rhett that she knows everything and even threatens him not to come any closer. Rhett tries to calm her down, saying he's here to help, and asks her what she knows about the organization. But the girl doesn't listen and runs away. At that moment, two peacekeepers appear and capture her. When Rhett tries to talk them into letting her go, they ignore him. Within seconds, they execute the girl right in front of him, leaving Rhett helpless to stop it or save her. Meanwhile, we're introduced to another character, a woman named Jan, who is heading to work at the company. When she arrives, she goes to her friend Catherine's office to greet her but learns the shocking news that Catherine has died. At the same time, a group of peacekeepers arrives and arrests Rhett, taking him to the intelligence office. There, Rhett meets an investigator named Gab Cass, who tells him he has been suffering from memory loss for 6 months. Gab Cass explains that this isn't Rhett's first violation, listing all the offenses he has committed over the past 6 months. The most recent was his attempt to obstruct justice and save the girl from execution. Rhett tells her that all he wants is to leave this country. But Gab Cass shocks him by informing him that he will be transferred to a rehabilitation center, and that leaving the country is impossible, no matter what. She gives him some time to gather his important belongings before the transfer. Meanwhile, back at the company, Jan is approached by a new coworker who apologizes for their unpleasant first meeting. He introduces himself as Pierce and invites her to grab coffee. She agrees, and as they chat, Pierce talks about the advancements in the world caused by C. He admits that he's uncomfortable with these changes and doesn't like what's happening to people because of them. Jan, however, disagrees and argues that the company isn't harming humans but enhancing their physical and mental capabilities, especially after implanting the chip, which turns them into peacekeepers. Pierce remains unconvinced. As they talk, Pierce lights a cigar, but Jan quickly stops him, pointing out that smoking is prohibited in public spaces. But Pierce didn't care about her words and continued smoking the cigarette until he noticed one of the guards approaching. At that moment, Jan was terrified and begged Pierce to throw the cigarette away quickly, but it seemed like Pierce enjoyed the challenge, which made him refuse to put it out until the guard got closer. When the guard arrived, he told Pierce that smoking was prohibited and asked him to extinguish the cigarette. However, Pierce ignored him and kept smoking. Finally, the guard gave him a 10-second ultimatum to put it out, threatening that he would face execution if he didn't comply. The guard started counting, and Jan was tense and frightened by what was happening in front of her. At the very last second, Pierce relented and put out the cigarette. Despite this, the guard took him away to pay the fine imposed on him. Before leaving, Pierce told Jan that the goal of the peacekeepers was to make people live in fear of them, so she needed to do the opposite and show courage. Jan returned to work, and later, a colleague of hers came over to advise her to stay away from Pierce because he was strange. She also reminded Jan that she had been friends with Catherine, who had been executed, and that this would make her constantly suspicious in the eyes of the guards. She urged Jan to avoid any suspicion. Afterward, her colleague handed her the file of the new case she was assigned to work on. When Jan opened the file, she was shocked because the case involved her brother, Rhett, who had run away from home 6 months ago. At that moment, Rhett was packing his belongings, preparing to leave the country. When the doorbell rang, he opened it and found Jan standing in front of him. Jan threw herself into his arms, crying. It was then revealed that Rhett was her runaway brother. After calming down, Jan angrily hit Rhett for abandoning her and asked him what had happened to him during the past 6 months. However, she called him Sean, revealing that his real name was Sean and that he had changed his identity. Sean explained that he couldn't talk now because he was involved in a case, though he was innocent. He added that he needed to escape quickly before the guards came to arrest him. At that moment, a guard arrived and informed Sean that his time was up, demanding that he accompany him to the rehabilitation center. Sean refused and said he was leaving the country. The guard gave him a short deadline to change his mind, otherwise, he would face immediate execution. Sean then asked Jan to leave the house quickly because he planned to choose death over being sent to the rehabilitation center. But Jan refused to leave. Determined to help her brother, Jan hit the guard on the head until he lost consciousness. She realized the gravity of her action and that she was now involved in a crime with her brother. But Sean reassured her, promising to protect her and never leave her alone. They escaped the house together, but they were soon confronted by another group of guards. They tried to flee down the stairs, evading capture until they were eventually cornered in a hallway. Sean fought the guards in a fierce struggle and managed to take a weapon from one of them, using it against them. Unfortunately, Jan was seriously injured in the head by one of the guards. Sean carried her and used an empty canister to treat her wound as best as he could. Meanwhile, the company, C, was holding an emergency meeting. A senior official named Green ordered the immediate capture of Sean and his sister. Their images were circulated everywhere as wanted criminals, with instructions for anyone who saw them to report them immediately. Pierce was at a restaurant when he saw Jan's picture on the screen. Alarmed, he rushed out to call her. Meanwhile, Sean and Jan had managed to escape and checked into a hotel in the city, unaware that their pictures were plastered all over town. They booked a room to stay in for the night, but as soon as they left the reception area, the hotel owner triggered the alarm and reported them. At the same time, Sean is having a conversation with Jan and feels guilty for getting her involved in a problem she had nothing to do with. Jan reminds him of the promises they made when they were young, saying they wouldn't abandon each other no matter what. She assures him that she will never leave him again and asks Reed not to give up on her either. At that moment, they hear the guards outside, along with Green. They quickly come up with an escape plan, and Sean instructs her to hold her breath for as long as possible. They manage to escape through the ventilation shafts. However, as soon as they come out, they encounter more guards. To escape, they are forced to split up. Sean gets out of the hotel, but is shot in the stomach by one of the guards. As more guards approach to finish him off, a mysterious man appears, kills the guards, and helps Sean escape. Meanwhile, Jan keeps running until she reaches the hotel owner, begging for his help. As he tries to get her out of the hotel, they find Green and the guards waiting for them, and they kill the owner. However, Green refuses to kill January. Instead, she takes her to the company, intending to use her as bait to lure Sean back. Later, we see Sean being rescued by the mysterious man, who turns out to be Pierce. Pierce treats Sean's wound, and Sean is desperate to leave and save his sister. Pierce reassures him, saying they won't kill her yet because she's the bait they need to draw Sean in. Pierce then explains everything to Sean, revealing that he used to work with them 2 years ago, fighting against the C Company and its corruption and cruel experiments on humans. However, the company captured Pierce and implanted a chip in his brain as punishment. Sean had also been turned into a peacekeeper during this time. Pierce managed to save Sean, removing the chip from his brain. But in the process, Sean lost his memory and forgot everything that had happened. To keep him safe, Pierce changed Sean's name and severed ties with him. Pierce reveals that the company has now advanced its operations and needs Sean's help to bring them down because he's the only one who had a chip in his brain and managed to survive without it. Sean agrees to join Pierce again, but first, he insists on rescuing his sister from the company. Meanwhile, the company implants a chip into Jan's brain. After the surgery, they take her to an isolated room, where they play extremely loud, disturbing music while brutally dissecting a living human body in front of her, attempting to destroy what remains of her human consciousness. Sean arrives just in time, eliminating the guards and rescuing January. At first, she struggles to recognize him due to the trauma she endured, but after a moment, she regains her senses and recognizes him. Together, they escape the company. As soon as they're out, they are pursued by a large helicopter. Sean's wound reopens, so Jan protects him, distracting the helicopter long enough for Sean to treat his wound quickly. They continue their escape journey, but unfortunately, Green finds them. She threatens them with her weapon and orders her guard to call for backup to capture them. Unexpectedly, Green turns and kills her own guard without hesitation. Sean is shocked by what's happening and notices that Jan starts acting strangely. Suddenly, she declares that Sean must die. Green knocks Sean unconscious. When Sean regains consciousness, he finds Green waiting for him. She explains that she isn't against them and has been working with their side for 2 years to bring down the company. When Sean asks about what's happening to Jan, Green tells him that the company implanted a chip in her brain, intending to use her as the key to access the company's main control system and destroy it. Green explains that once the company's control system is destroyed, all peacekeepers will be freed from the chips in their brains and returned to their human state. However, Sean is hesitant to go along with the plan. Green tells him that Jan's human nature is still fighting against the chip, but it won't last long. If Jan loses control, Sean will lose her forever. Fearing for his sister's fate, Sean agrees to help. Green assures him that they will also fulfill his wish to escape the country with Jan once their mission is complete. Sean is convinced and joins their mission. The three of them head to the company director's house, managing to eliminate the guards and break into the house. They find the director, who recognizes Green. Without hesitation, Green kills him, and they continue their mission. But before the manager dies, he manages to press the alarm at the same time that Green and the others enter through the secret door that leads to the main control room. At that point, they come across another group of guards, and with them is Gab Cass, who grabs Jan and threatens to kill her. Then, she tells Sean that he's making a huge mistake by joining to destroy the system, and she takes advantage of Sean's memory loss, trying to make him doubt them. She tells him they will kill him as soon as they get what they want. But Sean doesn't believe her and stabs her with the knife he had. Green takes the knife from him and continues stabbing her until she finishes her off completely. After that, they reach the gate to the main control room, and at that moment, Pierce realizes he's been injured and won't be able to continue with the mission. He tells them he will stay behind to cover their backs until they get to the control room. The three of them head to the room, but before they do, Green thanks Pierce for all the help he's given them. When they enter the control room, Pierce sees a blood-like signal connected to the main unit, which turns out to be a human body. At that point, Sean asks what he's seeing, and Green tells him that this is the future that will destroy humanity and marginalize their role in the world. She then explains what they need to do and how to cut off the connection to the main control unit, where Jan plays a crucial role as she is currently one of the peacekeepers, meaning she's the only one who can use her fingerprint to disable the system. When Green asks her to use her fingerprint to disable the system, Jan reacts and refuses the request. But now, the chip has fully taken control of her mind. After that, Jan talks to her and tells her that she made a huge mistake when she decided to go against the company, and that her punishment is death. Then, without hesitation, she kills Green and finishes her off. She then returns to Sean, who is still fighting death, and tells him that he's just a bug who thought he was a hero and could change the world. Suddenly, Jan manages to regain control of her mind and speaks to Sean, telling him that he has to run fast or she will kill him. But Sean refuses and says he left them once and ran, but this time he won't leave her. He asks her to fight against the chip in her mind to save the rest of the world, assuring her that he will be by her side and help her. Jen then tries with all her might to disable the system, and finally, she's able to use her fingerprint and open the exit gate. At the same time, a guard comes out of it, but the chip regains control of her again, and she can't stop herself from killing her brother Sean. Afterward, she destroys the chip in her mind and returns to her natural state. She then kills Sean with her own hands. She continues to completely disable the system, which makes the guard take off his helmet, revealing that he is a woman. Jan is shocked to discover that the guard is also a woman and that she doesn't remember anything. The woman asks Jan for help, and Jan agrees to help her and anyone who has suffered the same injustice that she did. And that's how the events of today's movie end. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you liked the video, to support us with a like and subscribe.